Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. And first graphic, hazardous weather, no watches, warnings, or advisories anywhere around the state here for tonight or tomorrow. Expecting some rises in the river and stream levels over the mid and upper Tanana Valley, especially over toward the Alaska Range, due to increasing rainfall expected into the area. Otherwise, not much going on, warning, advisory, watch-wise around the state. And from there, taking a look at fire danger, still extreme over the Yukon Flats area, on down toward Eagle, where Eagle was in the lower 70s today with east winds gusting to 30 miles an hour. So that kicks it up to extreme fire danger there, with an area of high extending out toward or into the Koyukuk Valley, and then also the Tanana Valley with an extreme area southwest of Fairbanks and southeast of Fairbanks, and mostly on the west and north side of the Alaska Range. And that's improving by the moment over especially the eastern Alaska Range, where rainfall is increasing today and this afternoon, expected to continue. So it should see a pretty good improvement in the fire danger for the mid and upper Tanana Valley, and to a lesser extent there for the upper Yukon Koyukuk valleys over the next 12-24 hours. So moving on to breakup chart here. Really not much change, still some open along the Noatak River and the Kaparik River, still mostly ice, and from Colville out to the Arctic coast, and on the Colville from Umiat on out to the Arctic coast, mostly ice, and then really some open around the observing site there, and unknown farther upstream, like the Sagwan upper 2/3 unknown, and the lower portion out to the coast is still mostly ice. And so from there, satellite imagery, you can see mostly sunny again over the northeast part of the state, right on out to the eastern Arctic coast again, clear skies, and over the interior, south of the Alaska Range, temperatures rising to the mid to upper 70s by early to mid-afternoon today. Then you pick up the clouds from south of the Yukon River into the Tanana Valley with some light rain now pushing into the Fairbanks area. And rain on the increase along the Alaska Range and into the Copper River Basin. Nothing too heavy at this point in time, but showers back toward the west there, Galena and Ruby, picking about 1/10 of an inch during the day today. And Yakutat, Juneau, and Metlakatla all had 1/2 an inch of rain in the last 12 hours, ending at 2 p.m. this afternoon, with the continued onshore flow and that low pressure area just off the coast there lifting northward. Out in the Bering Sea, low pressure around the Pribilof Islands there kept it cloudy, showery, and cool, and a little breezy along the southwest coast, Cape Newnan, a little gusty on the winds with about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. Otherwise, most other areas saw less than that. King Salmon seeing winds gusting to 30 miles an hour, and that's good for today. Enough gradient over the northern Panhandle, Haines seeing winds gusting to 30 miles an hour today, and go along with the rain there, while northerly winds up to 35 miles an hour with light snow and fog occurred at Gamble, and kind of a mixed shower condition on the northwest coast. Low clouds and fog reduce visibilities to 1/4 mile in some locations on the western Arctic coast, but was much better to the west. And a couple of troughs spreading showers from the central Aleutians, and especially the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, rotating around that slowly weakening 993 millibar low just north of St. Paul. For tonight, that kind of wobbles around out there and really doesn't change much of an intensity. It keeps it damp and unsettled with surges of moisture rotating around, especially on the southern quadrant of that, and then weakening as they pull away like the one approaching Kodiak Island. Just some scattered isolated showers associated with that, trying to make landfall on the southeast side of the island or towards Sitkinak and Old Harbor. Otherwise, rain on the increase, Copper River Basin, and that's spilling into the Alaska Range, looking for the heaviest rainfall south and southeast of Fairbanks. And that'll spread northward, possibly toward Eagle, toward morning, and extend back to the eastern North Gulf Coast. Showers on the decrease for the Panhandle, and the Bering Sea pretty unsettled and damp. Really not much change. Weak high pressure farther out to the west, and look for some increasing low clouds and fog over the Arctic coast and locally the North Slope. And that'll continue into tomorrow, a day much like today actually there, except probably dry now all along the coastline. Best chance of sunshine on the east side there for the Arctic coast, low clouds and fog central and west side, and showers on the increase. Looks like northern Koyukuk Valley to the southern slopes of the central Brooks Range, and then some of those showers could develop into an isolated thunderstorm or two around the Tanana area there, east or west of Fairbanks. Rain, Fairbanks eastward to Eagle, southward across the Alaska Range. Copper Basin looking pretty wet, cutting off there northern Cook Inlet. Showers for the Prince William Sound area, Kenai Peninsula, rain and showers for Memorial Day for the Panhandle, and no change out over the Bering Sea. That low is weakening and continues to weaken on Tuesday as it pulls northward to St. Matthew Island, but still a trough will keep a chance of showers, cloudy skies in for the Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians. New front spreads some rain and small craft advisory level winds into the western Aleutians, probably by late morning or midday, shimmy in at 2. Look for small craft advisory winds to roll into the areas west of Adak, probably by late afternoon. Otherwise, leftover moisture keeps it cloudy with IFR conditions in fog, drizzle, light rain for Adak and Atka. Alaska Peninsula not looking too shabby northeast of Nelson Lagoon. Pilot Point, Port Hayden, maybe King Salmon could see some afternoon clearing. Afternoon showers possible for Kodiak Island, otherwise a dry day, and showers pretty widespread over interior Alaska with cloudy skies to mostly cloudy skies. Any breaks at all will be a bonus, and any one of the showers over the eastern interior could develop into an isolated thunderstorm or two. And showers actually trying to diminish over the Panhandle, but mostly cloudy, maybe a few sun breaks in the afternoon out along the coastline with that high just to the west. Arctic coast, same story, low clouds and fog possible anywhere along the coastline there with lighter winds now, especially on the east side, winds coming down from what they have been. And low clouds and fog will extend into the Chukchi Sea. Risk of an afternoon shower for the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, could see some partial clearing there from Noatak Valley into the Selawik, Kotzebue area, and maybe the central Seward Peninsula could see a little bit of sunshine, but really kind of hard to find anywhere in the state for the next couple of days. And cooler temperatures over the eastern interior, again, as moisture and cooler temperatures improve fire dangers up over the upper Tanana Valley and especially the upper Yukon Valley on Tuesday. Lows for tonight for the Arctic coast, upper 20s to lower 30s, with lows pretty mild, upper 40s, lower 50s. Upper Yukon Valley with the breezy conditions there, and near 50 in the Tanana Valley around Fairbanks, but lower to mid 40s south of the mountains, or just lower 40s. Lower to mid 40s for the Panhandle, mid 30s Bering Sea, lower 30s for St. Lawrence Island, and either side of 40 for the Aleutians, followed by highs tomorrow. Still into the 70s, lower 70s there for the upper Yukon Valley areas, but cooler for the Tanana Valley, 55 to 60, mid 60s still for the central interior. That could help kick off or trigger a thunderstorm in the afternoon. And 50s south of the Alaska Range to near 50 along the North Gulf Coast, Kodiak Island, upper 40s to upper 50s for the Panhandle. And out over the Pribilofs, mid-40s, lower to mid-40s for the Aleutians. On Alaska, about 47, while Gamble should see a high about 36. Same thing for Pilot Point. And right around the freeze mark there on the central Arctic coast, a little above off to the west and to the east. Lows, again, Tuesday morning, not too bad. Mid-45 to 50 there, upper Yukon Valley in toward the central interior. Cooler in the Tanana Valley, mid-30s to lower 40s, and upper 30s to lower 40s now for southern Alaska, mid-30s Copper River Basin, and near 40 for Bristol Bay, followed by highs in the 50s for the southeast coast. Cooler over the interior there with 60s is about it, and 50s from the Tanana Valley, southward of the Copper River Basin, 50s south central Alaska, lower 50s to upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather. IFR possible anywhere on the Arctic coast North Slope tomorrow, and mostly IFR through the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula, most of Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, all of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, up the south side of the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Marginal VFR, some areas of IFR over the southeast interior, especially east and south of the Alaska Range. Marginal for the southeast coast. And then for Monday afternoon, got IFR continuing North Slope, Arctic coast, and a swath of VFR from the eastern Brooks Range, upper Yukon Valley, right on down the Yukon Kuskokwim River valleys, and then picking up marginal along the southwest coast. Mostly IFR, Bering Sea from the Bering Strait, covering all of the Aleutians, most of the Alaska Peninsula. A marginal VFR afternoon in store for Kodiak Island, and breaking out to VFR, northern Cook Inlet, southern Susitna Valley, and over to about Palmer or so. Otherwise, Copper River Basin, marginal VFR with some IFR over near the Fairbanks area, and VFR for the Panhandle. And then back to some IFR with marginal VFR for a good portion of the southeast coast, and again, marginal VFR, southern Alaska, southeast interior with some scattered areas of IFR thrown in. And that extends down to the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, mostly VFR out west, and then Bering Sea, Bering Strait, and central western Aleutians, IFR, marginal VFR, Fox Islands to Bristol Bay, IFR socked in for the North Slope and Arctic coast. And that holds mostly through Tuesday afternoon, some improvement in the west side though. And then we've got a zone of marginal VFR extending southward from a IFR zone in the Koyukuk Valley with marginal conditions south into Cook Inlet and Kodiak Island, and the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula, some IFR. VFR for the Panhandle, some marginal VFR right along the coastline. And for the western Bering Sea, northern and western Bering Sea, IFR, including the Aleutians. And for Enitovik, starting out IFR, becoming VFR in the afternoon. Same trend for Radigan, same forecast trend with IFR to start, VFR to end. And Lake Clark and Merrill, some improvements starting out IFR, especially on those eastern entrances, becoming marginal by late morning or midday through the afternoon. Rainy, occasionally marginal. Windy, same forecast, occasional marginal VFR at times throughout the day, Memorial Day. And for Isabel, IFR. Mintesta, marginal VFR, and for Tanita, looking a little marginal there. And for Portage, IFR starting, becoming marginal VFR for the afternoon. And for Chilkoot and White, improving, starting out marginal VFR, becoming VFR, probably by mid to late morning through the afternoon. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet up over the eastern North Gulf Coast around Yakutat and possibly over toward Skagway. And then it warms as you head north, 4,000 feet along the eastern Alaska Range, 6,000 feet northern interior, and the warmest air with the upper level ridge centered up that way, 8,000 feet plus over the eastern Brooks Range, central eastern Arctic coast. Chillier out over the Bering Sea at about 2,000 feet. And for icing, a pretty good swath over the southeast interior extending all the way up almost to the Yukon River there of light to isolated moderate rime icing, freezing level of 10,000 feet. That extends down across much of the Panhandle and other zone. Threat of icing along the southwest interior, the Shelikof Strait, and then some scattered areas of elevated icing threats out over the Alaska Peninsula and southeast Bering Sea from the Pribilofs on down toward the Fox Islands. And looking at the jet stream, there's the upper level ridge centered over the eastern Arctic coast with a 8,000 plus foot freezing level associated with it. And then we've got upper level low right off the southeast coast and a bigger one out over the southeast Bering Sea. To the south of those centers, westerly flow 80 to 120 knots. South of the forecast area, we can see a couple of bands splitting off and wrapping back from the southeast across Kodiak and into the Kuskokwim Valley, more easterly 40 knots across southern Alaska. Taking a look at 9,000 feet, low near Pribilofs, we got southwest or westerlies 25 knots, becoming southeast 25 in the southwest coast, and 25 to 30 knot winds around that low at 3,000 feet. Turbulence-wise, look for a light to isolated moderate chop from roughly Adak on up the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the southwest mountains. And after the break, I'll be back to look at the marine forecasts.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining me once again is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Eric, welcome back to the program.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
And once again, you brought some wonderful satellite pictures to show us and do a little show and tell about. It's just amazing. I can get lost in satellite pictures all day. What did you bring today?
Right. Well, weather satellites, what are they good for? Yeah. Of course, there's the pretty pictures that they bring us. You know, we've got a picture here from April of 2012. Okay. The Sumi NPP satellite, it's what they call a polar orbiter, which means it covers Alaska because we're near the pole. Beautiful image. You can see a storm off of southeast Alaska, the sea ice along the Bering Sea up into the Arctic. A really nice picture, and this is important because it allows a forecaster to see where the storms are, where the ice is, where the clear areas are. You need to know where the weather is now if you're going to forecast it into the future. Exactly. So satellites give us these good pictures. This is called surveillance of the weather. And you know, that same satellite also has another picture from a little more recently, August of 2014, Tropical Storm Iselle bearing down on the Hawaiian Islands. Okay. Hawaii doesn't get hit by a whole lot of tropical storms or hurricanes. Sometimes it does. And here's a picture from the same satellite, the Sumi NPP Polar Orbiter. It shows Tropical Storm Iselle approaching the Hawaiian Islands from the southeast. You can see the storm swirling away there, and then there's the Hawaiian Islands. This is a tropical storm, not quite as strong as a hurricane because we don't see the eye wall in there. This is still a serious weather system. And all of this information comes just from that satellite picture. It's so much information, and it's wonderful to look at. You see the beauty and the awe of nature right there depicted in that weather satellite. We call it a polar orbiter because the satellite flies high over the globe. Maybe we could look here at we happen to bring the planet Earth with us. This is our satellite. A polar orbit flies really close to the Earth, maybe 800 kilometers over the Earth, and goes up over the pole and then back down, and then the Earth spins under the satellite as it goes by. That's in contrast to the geostationary birds, which are much further out. And they don't view Alaska quite as well. So we love those polar orbiter satellites here in Alaska.
So when we're a lot closer, we get much better details and imagery and an idea of a better maybe position of what's going on when it's passing right over Alaska or right over Hawaii.
Yes, exactly right. The polar orbiter gives such a good view of places like Alaska. And because it's close to the planet, there's another aspect of satellites in the polar orbit that is helpful for weather forecasting. It's an aspect that's maybe not as immediately obvious as the pretty pictures that we see. And that is the capacity for the satellite to produce what's called a sounding. That is finding the vertical profile of temperature and moisture in the atmosphere. We've all heard of weather balloons. Weather balloons are launched here in Alaska twice a day at a number of airports, everywhere from Barrow to St. Paul Island to Kodiak, Anchorage and Fairbanks, Yakutat, a number of places. Launch these balloons, and we've got a picture of a balloon being launched at an airport, and the balloon goes up. It's pulling a little package, an instrument package with it that reports temperature, pressure, humidity data back, and we use that information to help feed what are called numerical weather prediction models.
The models.
The models, right. It's a mouthful, so we just call it the models. And these computer simulations, these models, are computer programs that simulate the motion of the atmosphere. Well, how does a model know what the future will be like? You have to tell the model what things are like now. And you give it all kinds of information, including information from these satellite sounders. Very important. Just how important are they? We have a recent, comparatively recent study that really brings home, and this is Superstorm Sandy. We have a track image here of the track of Hurricane Sandy. It was down in the Caribbean around Cuba, and then it moved north over the ocean, offshore of the eastern seaboard, and then at the last minute, Sandy made what's called the left hook. It turned hard to the left and slammed into New Jersey. It was a major problem for the mid-Atlantic states, a calamity. It fused with another weather system and became known, this is not an official title, but Superstorm Sandy. It was quite the weather event. Well, the modelers, after the event, there's a group of modelers in Europe. They have a very good model, a frustratingly good model if you're the Americans trying to pursue their excellence. They reran their model afterwards in what's called a data denial study, where they kept everything the same. So this is 6 months after Sandy, but they went back, they reran the same model, they fed the model the same initial conditions, that is telling the model, okay, here's where we think Sandy is, down near Cuba in the Caribbean. Everything was the same as it was in the real forecast, except they didn't let the model know.
No satellite data.
No satellite data. So we're going to put that over here. No satellite data for you. The resulting forecast 5 days out, back when the real Sandy was happening and the model had the satellite data, the forecast was pretty good. We've got a graphic here on the left side. We show the forecast of where Sandy would be, and that's the red bullseye on the left. It's just south of where it actually wound up hitting. Not a bad forecast from this computer simulation, 120 hours out. On the right, you see the same model, but it didn't have the satellite data to help it understand things. And the storm is way offshore. It misses. The forecast is more accurate when the model has the satellite data. So that's the idea today we want to convey, is weather satellites. They're important because they show us the pictures of where storms are. We see good examples of this. Yeah, the surveillance right now, it's great to look at those pictures. And in addition, behind the scenes, maybe not immediately obvious, but the models have to have that satellite data for them to be good forecasts. And then a meteorologist uses that information to help everyone with the forecast of where the storms will be in the future.
That is fascinating information that we can look at, see where things have been, because you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. That's that old adage there. But seeing that satellites are actually helping us move forward in the weather information system is pretty amazing stuff.
You bet.
And if you want to check out Eric's satellite images that he's been talking about, whether that's something from today or last week or even much further back in Alaska history, you can easily do that yourself. Go to www.gina.alaska.edu and you can find those images there. Eric, thanks so much for joining us once again. And again, we will join you hopefully again soon for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, where you'll tell us more really cool information about the satellites over our heads in Alaska. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the marine forecasts here. Pretty light winds there up along the north coast, eastern Gulf Coast, over toward Yakutat, west at 5 knots, and really not too much stronger on down the coastline, west-southwest, 10 knots, seas 6 to 7 feet. And for the inside water areas, for Clarence Strait, southwest, 10 knots, Stevens Passage, south at 10, Northern Lynn Canal, which could include Haines and Skagway, could see 25-knot winds out of the south, pretty much like today with seas up to 5 feet for small craft advisories. And then those will come down to about 20 knots out of the south in the afternoon there for Lynn Canal, 4-foot seas. Otherwise, northwest at 10 for Stevens Passage, north 10, Clarence Strait. South coast, northeast, 10 knots, seas 5 feet. And kind of a variable 5-knot wind pattern for the north coast with seas at around 5 feet. Cook Inlet, north of the Forelands, south at 10. Southern Cook Inlet, south 15 and southeast 20 knots for Kamishak Bay. Barren Island, southeast only 15 knots, seas 5 feet. North Gulf Coast, southerlies at 10 knots, seas 5 feet. And Prince William Sound, variable to south, and the Mid-Sound at about 10 knots with 2-foot seas. Those will turn east, but stay the same speed at 10 knots with 2-foot seas for Tuesday, and south 10 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast. West side northeast at 10 with 5-foot seas. Barren Island southeast 15, 7-foot seas, and southeast 20 with 6-foot seas for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet southerlies 10 to 15 knots. Kodiak Island south winds at 10 knots for Shelikof Strait, east 15, 2-foot seas, and Bristol Bay, southeast at 20, seas 5 feet, and the Alaska Peninsula, southerly winds 20 knots with seas on the Bering Sea side 5 feet, Pacific side 9 feet. And for Tuesday, southerlies 15 to 20 knots with 7-foot seas for the Alaska Peninsula. Bristol Bay, south at 20, seas at about 4 feet. And Kodiak Island, southerlies 10 to 15 knots with 5 to 7-foot seas. And Front Alaska Island, small craft advisory, southwest 25 knots, 7 to 9-foot seas. Unmac Island, west 25 knots, 8 to 9 foot seas, and 20-knot winds for AKwx. Out of the west, seas running 6 to 7 feet, and from areas west of Adak to Shimia, west 15, 4 to 5 foot seas. Those will pick up on Tuesday with the approach of that front farther to the west. Winds will become southeast and increase to 25 knots by midday for Shimia to Kiska, and by late afternoon from Kiska to Amchitka. Otherwise, Adak and Atka, southwest 20 knots. And for the Fox Islands, southwest 15 to 20 knots, seas running 6 to 7 feet. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, southeast at 20 knots. North side there along the Yukon Delta coast, east at 20 knots, 3 foot seas. Pribilof south at 10, east 15 for St. Matthew Island. Southeast 15, St. Lawrence Island, and southeast at 10 for Norton Sound. For Tuesday, east 15 for Norton Sound, northeast 20 for St. Lawrence Island, southwest 15 for the Pribilof, south to southeast at 20 knots for the southwest coast. And brisk wind advisories again tomorrow for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. Central and west side, though, east at 20. And southerlies at 20 knots from Wales to Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, northeast at 20. And then for Tuesday, northeast 15, Wales to Cape Thompson, turning south from Cape Thompson and southwest on the western coast. Easterlies, but lighter for the central and east side, 10 to 15 knots. And for tonight again, look for areas, low clouds and fog to become considerable in areas for the Arctic coast and North Slope, especially on the west side there with some scattered, possible mixed, very light precipitation. And showers along a trough axis, just looks like through the Koyukuk Valley, but rain on the increase for the Copper River Basin, western Alaska range, especially south and east of Fairbanks into the 40-mile country, upper Tanana Valley. And scattered showers for the Kenai Peninsula, showers on the decrease for the Panhandle, and rain from the Alaska Peninsula eastern Aleutians to the Pribilofs. And for Monday, no change out over the Bering Sea. Weak high pressure farther to the west dries it out with light winds. Rain could be moderate along the Alaska Range, locally into the upper Tanana Valley areas. Isolated thunderstorms from Fairbanks to Tanana possible, and more wet weather for the southeast coast, and showery for Kodiak Island, Kenai Peninsula. Tuesday, mostly cloudy across much of interior Alaska with showers, isolated thunderstorms over the eastern interior areas. Less shower activity, possible clearing for the southeast coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.